Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Surbhi Sardana, and I'll be taking current affairs for environment, geography, and science and technology for the last 1 week, that is from August 3rd to August 9th. So, let's see what is the index for today. The first topic we'll be discussing is about an international convention, that is CITES. It is related to wildlife and flora. The second one is the Wildlife Protection Act Amendment Bill 2021. Government recently amendment लेकर आना चाह रही है Wildlife Protection Act 1972 में. Lok Sabha has already passed this bill. So this bill is very important because Wildlife Protection Act 1972 अपने आप में ही बहुत ज़्यादा important है. And the third one that we will be discussing today is the National Leprosy Eradication Program. We'll also be seeing कि leprosy है क्या और ये किस वजह से cause होता है. ऑल्सो फॉर सीज द मेन सी हमारे चैनल पर रोज करंट अफेयर्स डिस्कशन चलता है. एवरी डे दिस करंट अफेयर्स डिस्कशन हैपन्स ऑन दिस चैनल एंड विद रिगार्ड्स टू दैट अ क्वेश्चन इज आस्क्ड from you from mains point of view. So the question for today is this, and the topic will be discussed here itself within some time. So you have to highlight the amendments that Wildlife Protection Bill 2021 seeks to bring to the previous act, that is the 1972 Act. इस एक्ट में कौन सी अमेंडमेंट्स लाने की कोशिशें की जा रही हैं इस amendment के through, and you have to answer in 150 words. So we will be discussing the amendments that have to be brought in, and you can share your answers at rajIASacademy.com. आपको जो लिंक है वेबसाइट का rajIASacademy.com का, वो आपको डिस्क्रिप्शन में अटैच्ड मिल जाएगा. So just click on that link, go to the mains answer writing section, and you'll see a list of questions. Answer it in the comment section under each question. So first of all, just let me know if you are there. Send it in the comment section, in the chat section. There's a message from Rohit Bhardwaj. Yes, good afternoon. Anybody else who's up there? Okay, Amulya. Fine. So let's carry on this session. Now let's start with the discussion. Okay. So the first topic with us today is a very important convention. It is called the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Fauna stands for animal diversity, flora stands for plant biodiversity. So बहुत साल पहले अराउंड 1960s में इट वाज रिकॉग्नाइज्ड कि अगर एक कंट्री से दूसरी कंट्री में ट्रेड होता है वाइल्ड एनिमल्स एंड प्लांट्स का, इफ ट्रेड हैपन्स बिटवीन टू कंट्रीज with regards to wild animals and plants, then it is highly probable that it might cause a problem to their existence where they have been traded from. For example, इंडिया में अगर कोई फ्लावर है जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा तादाद में पाया जाता है, what if you start exporting that flower a lot? If some XYZ country needs it and we start exporting it, there are high chances that that flower will go extinct in India after some time if we go with that export or that trade haphazardly. So to understand this problem on the international level, many leaders came together. It is a multilateral convention and उन्होंने ये convention बनाया, उस convention को sign किया काफ़ी सारी countries ने, and it came into force in 1975. This convention is popularly known as CITES, CITES. It is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Not all but endangered, जो शायद आने वाले थोड़े टाइम में लुप्त हो जाएंगे या खत्म हो जाएंगे. Species of wild fauna and flora. This is also known as the Washington Convention. As I told you that it is a multilateral treaty to protect endangered plants and animals from the threats of international trade. It was drafted as a result of a resolution adopted in 1963 at a meeting of members, IUCN के काफ़ी सारे members, International Union for Conservation of Nature, जो कि red list जारी करती है. There is a red list of biodiversity of plants and animal species. वो उनको categorize करते हैं कि कौन से plants या animals endangered हैं या extinct हो चुके हैं. So IUCN के members, they came together and they framed this convention. And this convention came into force in 1975. The aim is that, as I told you, the aim is very clear that whatever international trade is being carried out of these plants and animals, of wildlife, flora and fauna, it should not disturb their existence. It should not make them extinct. So it should not threaten the survival of the species in the wild. CITES affords varying degrees of protection to more than, as of now, 38,000 species. जब CITES in force आया था in 1975, they recognized just few animals, for example lion, tiger, elephant. सिर्फ इतने कुछ animals recognize इन्होंने किए थे. But as of now 38,000 animal and plant species have been listed. उनका खुद का ट्रेड या उनसे जुड़ी किसी भी चीज़ का, फॉर एग्जाम्पल फर ऑफ सम बियर, और यू नो टस्क्स और हॉर्न्स ऑफ सम अदर एनिमल, or you know some juice extract taken out of some plant or flower for medicinal purposes. So it regulates the products also. जो कि specimen आप निकाल लेते हैं एक plant या animal से, it regulates the specimens also. And this convention, this is legally binding. India has signed this convention in 1973. So this convention, ये convention legally binding है. But the important part about this convention is कि अगर एक country का अपना कोई national law है, if a country has a national law with regards to, you know, trade of wild animals and plants, then that law will prevail. It does not take the place of national law. It just provides a framework. Legally binding है that you have to comply with the provisions, but it just gives a framework. It is not a kind of law. Law has to be made by the nation itself. So in India, what do we have? We have the Wildlife Protection Act to protect such species, and that is also the second topic for today. And that is the second topic for today कि amendment जो लाई जा रही है Wildlife Protection Act में, that is just aimed at so that that act can comply more with CITES framework. CITES framework के साथ compliance बढ़ाने के लिए लाई जा रही है. So now there are 3 appendices that are there that are a part of CITES. This is very important from your prelims point of view. Appendix 1 for any law, किसी भी law का जो appendix 1 होता है या section 1 और schedule 1, it will deal with the most important things. Most important चीज़ें क्या होंगी biodiversity से related? They will be the animals or plants which are about to get extinct or which are critically endangered. So in appendix 1, only those animals and plants are taken in which trade is not permitted. They are nearly like they are on the verge of extinction. ये plants और animals extinct होने वाले हैं और इनका trade allow नहीं किया जाता except for exceptional circumstances. And out of all the species that have been listed in CITES, only 3% जितना minuscule number है जिनका trade after permission allowed है, because they are part of appendix 1. They are very close to extinction but trade is allowed. For example, अगर एक country के zoo से दूसरी country में transfer करना है किसी को, so CITES, so that permission has to be taken. These animals are listed under appendix 1. The appendix 2 is like थोड़ा सा कम protection, थोड़ा सा lesser protection, but the trade is again very strictly controlled because automatically जो CITES के अंडर animals या plants listed हैं वो already highly vulnerable है extinction के लिए. They are endangered plants and animals, so protection will be there in all the 3 appendices. The third one is, third appendix talks about plants, animals which are individual, which are like individualistic species with respect to every country. For example, अगर India में कोई animal है or there is some animal or plant related to India, then if that animal it has to be exported या Indian government को पता लगता है कि उसका export हो रहा है उस plant या animal का, then Indian government will have a problem. Indian government will have a problem because that animal is already endangered in India. And अगर उसका trade या illegal trade carry out किया जाता है और वो CITES में registered नहीं है या controlled नहीं है, then we will be at a loss. So such animals and plants, they are covered under appendix 3 of CITES, in which trade is regulated on the request of one particular country. So request for assistance in controlling trade of species protected in a specific country is listed under appendix 3. Quickly we'll go through all the appendices again. So Appendix 1 of CITES talks about species that are threatened with extinction. Commercial trade in source specimens of these species is not permitted. Commercial trade permitted नहीं है, but अगर कोई animal या plant species है जो एक country के zoo से या national park से दूसरी country में भेजना चाह रही हैं दो nations आपस में, so after taking permission, this transfer can be allowed. Otherwise, for commercial purposes, for making leather bags, for using the fur, these species are not permitted to be used or traded. Appendix 2, those that are not necessarily threatened with extinction, but trade must be controlled. So controlled trade hota, and Appendix 3, as we studied just now in detail, that they are important with regards to some particular countries, and countries which are parts of CITES can request them that yes, we want this species to be protected, and जो भी species का international trade हो रहा है उसको check किया जाए, so that international trade of these species can be stopped. So this was the entire topic about CITES. CITES समझना बहुत important है Wildlife Protection Act समझने के लिए. To comply with CITES, India has brought up this Wildlife Protection Act. The act that we follow as of now is the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. What is the aim of this act? See, before independence also, Wildlife Protection Acts थे. Animals और plants को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट ने भी बहुत सारी लेजिस्लेशंस लाई थी. सो दिस इज द बैकग्राउंड दैट इन 1887 the Wild Birds Protection Act was brought in. 1912 a second law was brought in. 1960 there was another legislation. 1972 में सबसे important legislation लाया गया. In UPSC and many state civil services examination and other examinations, questions from Wildlife Protection Act 1972 are recurrent. That's why we are taking this topic today. See, if you have studied polity, under Article 48A of the Constitution, which is your part of Directive Principles of State Policy, state का, or what do we call the state? State is the government, central government, state government, PSUs. State की responsibility है to protect wild animals and plants, to protect environment and ecology. In fact, it is one of our fundamental duties to protect the environment and ecology of our country under Article 51A. So, in any case, if you are asked with regards to this, also forest and wildlife, they are a part of concurrent list. So since the state has this responsibility under DPSPs to protect wildlife, this act has been brought in, and now the amendment, we'll study about the amendment today. This act is particularly to protect animals and birds. So wild animals, birds and plants, they are protected under this act because there is a constitutional provision behind it. Also we have to comply with CITES. Now what are the provisions of this bill? ये जो बिल है लोकसभा के मॉनसून सेशन में पास किया जा चुका है. अमेंडमेंट्स टू दिस पर्टिकुलर एक्ट, दे हैव बीन थॉट टू बी ब्रॉट इन बाय वेरियस गवर्नमेंट्स. बहुत टाइम से सरकार कोशिश कर रही है कि हम इस एक्ट को अमेंड कर सकें. नाउ व्हाई द अमेंडमेंट इज रिक्वायर्ड? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, टू कंप्लाई विद साइट्स, टू कंप्लाई मोर विद साइट्स. सेकेंडली, there are 6 schedules in Wildlife Protection Act. If you have studied environment for your exam, you might find that yes, there are six schedules. 4 schedules out of these deal with animals which are threatened. Animals को protect करने के लिए 4 schedules हैं. Vermins के लिए 1 schedule है. Vermin are those animals which cause a threat to human beings. For example, monkeys. Monkeys, they enter houses, they spoil the crops, or they bite people. So sometimes monkeys are so much in number that state governments have to declare monkeys as a vermin, that people can kill them without inviting any legal penalties from the government. So state government vermin declare कर देती है, and vermin word is covered under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. 4 schedules are there for protected animals. 1 schedule is there for protected plants. So this is the this is the structure of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now, अब जो नया बिल लाया गया है, they are saying that we'll have only 4 schedules. जो protected animals के लिए schedules होंगे, we'll have just 2 schedules for protected animals. Also, we will remove the schedule for vermin. We'll see vermins on a case to case basis. या हम protected animals में ही include कर देंगे. And the third and most important one, तीसरी चीज जो है, in appendix 3 of CITES, we studied that there are some species that can be, of major concern for some particular country. Now it is highly probable that out of 38,000 species which are listed in CITES, India में उनको protection ही नहीं मिल रही है. Probably they are not registered under Wildlife Protection Act. So this new act, this acts another schedule 4 जो होगा वो उन species को add करेगा जो कि sites में हैं but Wildlife Protection Act में covered नहीं है. So all the additional species or their specimens related to them, उनके body parts, उनके जो मूर्तियाँ होती हैं, anything related to them will be covered under the 4th schedule of this new Wildlife Protection Act. Now, to comply with CITES is about regulating international trade. So to comply with the regulations of international trade, to check that international trade, we need to have some body in India also. Only the, Environment Ministry, External Affairs Ministry, they cannot handle such a big task. There have to be specific bureaucratic bodies which have volunteers, which have officers who can prevent this international trade and comply with CITES. तो 2 bodies propose की गई हैं. The first one is the Management Authority. Management Authority will give certificates for import or export of species. So this body will be responsible if any import or export of any species has to be carried out. It will also, Management Authority, what will it do is that for a particular species or for a specimen of that species, they'll use an identification mark. For example, election के बाद आपकी जो finger पे ink लगा दी जाती है, probably that kind of indelible ink or whatever they feel is fit for the animals or plants, they will use that identification mark, and any person who has got this certificate of trading in that species will not be allowed to modify that identification mark. So this way we will be able to comply with CITES better than before. The second one is the Scientific Authority. See, practical काम के लिए आपने authority बना दी. There has to be something that has to do research also or advice also. कि अगर किसी species के export से या import से biodiversity को नुकसान हो रहा है या उस species के number कम हो रहे हैं, somebody has to be there to check that number also, right? To conduct research and to advise. So that giving advices and checking how that species are being threatened by the export or import will be seen by this Scientific Authority. So this authority gives advice on aspects related to impact on the survival of the specimens being traded. The next one is about invasive alien species. Have you heard about Prosopis julifora? In I think 2019 or 2020 prelims, UPSC asked this question, what is Prosopis julifora? Now we are promoting it for biodiesel, but Prosopis julifora, it is a plant which is found in India, widely मिल जाता है. It is a plant species found in India, but we don't want it. We just don't want it because वो जो plant है वो Mexico का है. In 1880s it was brought to India by Britishers for some purposes to treat desertification in some arid areas. But the plant got so bad on Indian soil कि वो सारे nutrients खींच लेता था. वो इतना जल्दी एक जगह से दूसरी जगह फैलता था कि जो local biodiversity थी वो खत्म हो गई. So local biodiversity has been hurt immensely by plants like Prosopis julifora, and this is what we call an invasive species. We have invasive species of animals also. Sometimes ships have ballast water. When they go for trading, they carry the water of the country where they start shipping from, and then they release it to some other continent or the country where they have to export the things. So they release that water, and through that water some insects, some small fishes, they also reach some other continent, and they might not be good for that continent. उस continent की जो edible fishes थी उनको या तो वो खा सकता है, या जो ये invasive fish है, this invasive fish might have a very high reproductive capacity and might eat up the oxygen and phytoplankton of that particular area. So basically the species which were needed earlier by that country, by that continent, will go extinct in no time, and these species, which we call the invasive alien species, these will prosper. So these are a big threat to India and all countries around the world. So a check on invasive alien species will be brought in by this new Wildlife Protection Act, or this bill if it becomes an act. So the central government may authorize an officer to seize and dispose. You know, invasive alien species can be used as a means of war also. For example, if a country wants to wage a war with country that entirely depends on fish or some forms of plant, आप invasive alien species भेज दीजिए, they're gone. So an officer to seize and dispose the invasive species. If food will not be available to those people, how will they survive? Okay. The next one is the bill empowers the central government to regulate or prohibit the import, trade, possession or proliferation of invasive species. If somebody has them in possession also, that person can also be legally tried. Then the next one is about control of sanctuaries. This talks about control of wildlife sanctuaries. So control of sanctuaries has been vested in Chief Wildlife Warden of State, who is a bureaucrat. उनकी responsibility होगी Chief Wildlife Wardens की to look after the sanctuaries in that state and the surrounding areas also. There are some areas called special areas. Special areas जो कि tribal होते हैं या जो 2006 का आपका Forest Act है उसमें covered है. The Scheduled Tribes and other traditional forest dwellers, Recognition of Forest Rights Act, or the 5th Schedule, where the aim of government is कि जो indigenous communities हैं या जो tribal communities हैं, these communities have been staying in forest and they are dependent on forest for their daily needs, like grazing, like food, like shelter. So they will not be pushed out, their rights have been recognized, and in these areas where the rights of these forest dwellers are protected, who will be the one responsible in framing what Chief Wildlife Warden has to do? Who will be the one responsible in making the system? If you have taken my lecture on this Scheduled Tribes and other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act, it clearly says that Gram Sabha will be the responsible authority. सारे decisions इस act के according tribes के लिए, indigenous people के लिए Gram Sabha लेती है. The entire village, that is the members of the entire village, Gram Sabha, who are 18 years or above, they come together and after discussions and deliberations, they decide what is good for their areas. And that's how compliance happens. So this was about control of sanctuaries. Then conservation reserves, if there is any national park or wildlife sanctuary and the government of that state, for example, if you are in Punjab and the government of state thinks that around this national park, we want like more protection. So, for example, 1 kilometer or 10 kilometer area can be declared as conservation reserve. So that will be protected area. Also, if the central government sitting in Delhi thinks that we want to protect this area in Punjab, central government can also declare. Then again, if you follow social media, you must have seen like this umpteen number of times surrender of captive animals. Sometimes there are some human beings who keep animals with them. An animal could be endangered or nearly extinct, but these animals are staying with some human beings. Sometimes due to a social bond, due to a bond of love, they are, you know, treated as pets or members of family, or sometimes out of violent acts also. So if there are people who want to give up on these animals, they want to release them from captivity, then they'll not be penalized. So surrender of captive animals has been included as part of this wildlife protection bill, that is the amendment bill. And compensation will not be given. For example, if somebody is releasing an elephant, so he'll not be compensated for the price of elephant. That elephant after release from captivity will become the property of government. Which government? State government. Penalties. So this is the last provision. The penalties under this act have been increased. Earlier we had just 25,000 fine. So now due to the change in the international rates, 25,000 has become much more easier for people to pay as penalty. Now that has been raised to 1 lakh rupees, and for protected animals earlier the penalty was rupees 10,000, that has been increased to 25,000. So this was about the amendment. Now I think that whatever question we have posted here in Seize the Mains, you will be able to deal with that and answer it. You just have to list down the amendments that have been brought in with this bill. So go to the website, answer this question and get it evaluated by us. The last topic for today is leprosy. See, this is a very famous disease and very infamous disease for India. If you have heard about the contributions of Mother Teresa, she worked for leprosy victims. She worked for the cause of leprosy victims, उनको vulnerability से निकालने के लिए. The disease is so bad that people feel fearful to even go near leprosy patients. So what is it? For example, these are most people. They have strong immunity and they have no leprosy. People with leprosy, first of all, they'll have moderate immunity. Immunity थोड़ी सी कम होगी, and this is tuberculoid leprosy. You know, the shape of their legs, hands, that body that changes. Also, lesions are formed on the skin. So it affects the skin, it affects the nerves, and then ultimately it causes paralysis and hence death. So this is a cause of concern. इंडिया का एक प्रोग्राम है, इट्स कॉल्ड द नेशनल लेप्रोसी एराडिकेशन प्रोग्राम. सो दिस वाज इन न्यूज़ रिसेंटली एंड विल बी स्टडिंग अबाउट इट. इट इज़ ऑल्सो नोन एज द हैंसेन्स डिजीज एंड ये बैक्टीरिया कॉज करता है. इफ़ यू आर सिटिंग फॉर एनी ऑफ द एग्जाम्स, व्हाट यू हैव टू स्टडी अबाउट डिजीजेज इज what are the targets of government, whether it has been eradicated or not, what are the vectors that cause it, whether it is caused by a mosquito, a bee, fly or anything else, and what is the microbe that is involved. Is it a viral disease? Virus से होता है, fungi से होता है, bacteria से होता है, किससे होता है? So leprosy is caused by bacterium. It is called the Mycobacterium leprae. It mainly affects the skin, eyes, nose and peripheral nerves. Symptoms actually result into paralysis after a later stage. So National Leprosy Eradication Program, what is it? The government has been implementing it. WHO का target है कि they have to eradicate leprosy from the entire world. Our India का जो अभी तक achievements है, the achievements have been with regards to taking leprosy from the level of a country-wide epidemic to a small level. अब सिर्फ थोड़ी ही states में रह गया है, पहले हर जगह फैल रहा होता था. So the Indian government has been able to control it. This program is a centrally sponsored scheme. What are centrally sponsored schemes? Centrally sponsored schemes में जो funding होती है, see to run any scheme, money is required. So who gives the money? Centrally sponsored schemes के under central government and state government कुछ share देती है. They both contribute to a pool and then the program runs. If it is a central sector scheme, then 100% funding comes from the central government. The nodal ministry is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, obviously. And nodal mission, the particular mission under which this mission is being carried out is the National Health Mission or NHM. So the aim of this mission is to detect the cases of leprosy at an early stage so that death does not result or before the stage of paralysis, इसको रोक लिया जाए by proper medication. So this is the aim of this proper initiative. The major initiative is that they find out patients, they give them incentives, they give the people also incentives to, find out if there are any patients other. If somebody tells the doctors or the dispensaries that there is a leprosy patient, if information is given, then incentives are given to them also. Certificates, awards and performance linked financial incentives are given to the districts and state governments. So it induces a sort of competitive federalism in the country. जितनी जल्दी disease eradicate होगा उतना अच्छा rank होगा उस state का. Contact tracing is done and post exposure prophylaxis is done. Contact tracing means if you have found a person infected with leprosy, then you just ask him or her, just like in the COVID-19 pandemic, contact tracing was done कि जिसके contact में आया है उनका भी testing होता है and they are also given the medication. So similarly for leprosy. So this was about the National Leprosy Eradication Program. Just learn about the bacterium associated with this disease. For a very long time in India, leprosy was a cause of concern. It could become a reason for seeking divorce also. So this was happening for a very long time. Then the respective judiciary, the judiciary of our country, it struck down that clause from the various laws that now leprosy is treatable. Treat किया जा सकता है. So seeking divorce on that basis is not very ethical, and it is not good for the human rights of people and the fundamental rights of the people, and it sends a very negative image of using people as means, not treating them as ends. So this was about today's discussion. These three topics are very important from your prelims and mains point of view. If there are any doubts, let me know in the comment section. To everyone, I'll see you another Wednesday, and also in Seize the Mains at 9 p.m. on our channel from Monday to Saturday. Good afternoon, take care and study well, and happy Raksha Bandhan to all of you.